Yeah, so we are live. I'm here with my friend Daniel. Daniel, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Very nice to meet you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you in the live chat, in the comments, and you've always got something insightful to add and something nice to say, so I really appreciate you. How how do you say your last name? Is it Drazenovich?
Yes.
Are you of Russian, Polish, Ukrainian
Well,
descent? What's
Croatian.
Croatian?
My dad was, yeah.
Croatia, is that what's the situation in Croatia today? Are they stable or?
As far as I know, they are. I'm not really, I'm kind of, I'm second generation.
I
So
see.
like, I'm
You've been there?
actually, no, no,
Okay. Okay. Okay.
no, I just heard all about it from my dad. So that's the
Uh,
most I know about
I see.
it.
You don't speak any of the language?
No, no, my mother's not Croatian.
I see. What was she?
My mother's Finnish.
Ah.
Yes,
Ah, so
yes.
you speak fluent Finnish then? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So I always like to ask my guests, as you know, to go back and talk about childhood, early impressions of God, religion, and wind your way, touching on the highlights up until today. If you could just tell us a little story using the highlights that you think are most important, the big impressions that had on you as a child and adolescent, adult, and all the way till today.
Well, I'm a cradle Catholic. Um, my dad was a very devout Catholic. Was was converted when he was in the military by the Holy Face
Ah,
of Jesus.
uh,
And anyway, so my first memory of Catholicism is I actually remember the Latin Mass. I was when it was
ah,
everybody went to the Latin Mass. That's how I'm
yeah.
66 years old, so yeah. So it started then, and and I remember the changeover when they changed over to the Novus Ordo and all of that stuff, and so yeah, I went through my a couple of my uncles, my great uncle. I mean, back in those days, like my great uncle actually was an altar boy. He knew how to speak Latin. He
Mm,
learned it as a kid, and because he was an altar boy, so he Latin was a lot of guys knew how to speak Latin. Back in those days, when my dad was a kid, you know the the priests kind of ruled. It was it was back in those days when I was a kid. It was it was hardcore. It was like you know you gotta toe the line. You gotta it was un, unfortunately to me it was more it was about the law. You
legalistic,
had
rigoristic, and legalistic, and
yeah.
the
Not to
letter
say
of the law.
not to say that it's not good. It's just that's the way it was.
Yeah.
Like you went to church and you didn't eat meat on Friday and you did this and you did that and that was just the way it was.
Yeah, yeah. So there was a social pressure. There was a lot of social pressure to conform, even if you didn't
Mhm.
necessarily want to do it on your own initiative. Like me, I converted, and no one around me is Catholic, so everything I do is of my own desire to please God and to fulfill my obligations as a human, as a Christian.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach, and that's why I'm glad that I was not raised Catholic, so I didn't have to be sort
Hmm.
of going with the flow and then not sure if it's because I want to or because I have to. And that's a
Yeah.
problem. That's a problem with religion very often, right?
That's right.
The Jews,
That's right.
the Jews of Jesus' day, they were caught up a lot in that religious hypocrisy and going through the motions. Make sure the outside of the vessel is nice and clean and white, and then the
Yeah,
inside, we can neglect the inside because as long as I'm getting the feedback that I'm going through the motions, I fit into society. I can climb the ladder, and I can have success and money and power. And that's the
yeah,
problem with the downside to humans in religion. We spoil everything, and we spoil religion by turning it into something artificial and just a means to an end, right?
yeah. Like my mother was a Protestant. She was a Lutheran, and it was just she just had to become a Catholic. That's just the way it was. There was just no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You
Yeah,
know, you want to get married to my dad, and you're going to be a Catholic, and that's it.
yeah,
And she did,
yeah.
and she's a she's a great Catholic, but yeah, it's just the way it was.
Did you ever ask her? I don't imagine she's still alive at this time of
Well,
life.
she's still alive.
She's still alive. How old is she?
She's 88,
Nice.
but
Yeah,
she's got dementia.
yeah,
But so oh yeah, she her
nice.
parents did not like the fact that she married a Catholic.
Oh, oh,
But my grandmother, they were beautiful people. They didn't go to church, but they loved God and they loved people.
yeah.
So, you know, it just
Where did your parents meet?
my parents I was born in Minnesota. My parents are from Minnesota,
Okay,
and they met. Both my mom and dad were teachers, and they met in my dad's hometown, little hometown, and they got married. Yeah.
ah, wow. Do you have a lot of siblings?
Yes, I've got there's seven of us,
Ah,
six boys and one girl. One of my brothers is deceased.
okay.
He died about 3 years ago. But yeah, there's seven of us.
Wow, amazing.
Hmm.
Is your where does your sister fall in the lineup of the seven?
My sister is right. My sister was the fourth.
Okay. Is she, did she go through a tomboy phase? Because I notice with sisters with a lot of brothers, they go through a tomboy kind of, I notice a little bit more of a masculine edge on these women. Is that true of your sister?
She wasn't a tomboy, but she was tough.
Tough, yeah.
She
Yeah.
yeah she's a tough girl. She's had quite a life. She lives in I think she lives in Winnipeg now, or
Oh, no
Calgary.
way.
Yeah,
Ah, okay.
I'm sure she'd probably do
Yeah, yeah,
she'd do a podcast. Yeah,
yeah.
she's a real ball of fire. That one.
Send her my email address and we'll hook it up for sure. That would
I
be
will.
excellent. That would be excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing more beautiful than a woman, and in my particular taste, I like strong women and
Oh yeah.
fiery women with a lot of
Oh yeah.
personality. That's my favorite. I love that.
Oh,
I
she's a
love that.
fiery one then.
Did she end up getting married?
Yes, she got married, and I think she got divorced.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I
Okay.
actually haven't seen her for a while.
Okay.
Like
Well,
it's been a while.
you got to come up to Canada.
I live in Canada.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I live in
Oh,
Sault Ste. Marie.
okay. Sault Ste. Marie, I've been there. Yeah, I've been
Yeah,
there.
we moved to Canada in 19. My dad was a school teacher, and we moved to Canada from Minnesota. We moved to Ontario
Ah,
in 1966.
no way.
Yeah,
Ah, wow. So you're like a full Canadian.
I'm Canadian with American roots.
Okay. And American passport?
Got kept my well. I guess the way it works with the Americans is once you're an American, you're always an
You
American.
got to pay those taxes. You got to pay
Gotta
those taxes.
pay the
No
taxes,
matter what, you got to pay
no
the
matter what.
taxes. Yeah.
Uncle
That's
Sam wants his.
yeah. Wow. So you've got probably, I don't want to talk about politics, but you've probably got a lot of interest on both sides of the border following all the nonsense on both sides then.
Well, Minnesota was predominantly a Democratic state.
Okay.
But what happened is mainly with the abortion issue,
Oh,
um, all the Democrats, like my dad became, like, they called them Reagan Democrats. My
ah,
dad was my dad was he was extremely pro-life.
nice.
So, but still, there was still, Minnesota's a Democratic. I mean, the Democratic Party is
Changed.
totally different.
Of
It's
course,
changed.
of
It's not
course.
it's not what it was
No, of
before.
course not.
It
So,
was about the Labor Party, but there's no Labor Party anymore.
yeah, they used to care about the little guy, right? Remember that?
Yeah, they used to.
Now it's switched around. Now we've got the right-wing populists that are trying to care about pretending to care about the little guy at least, but
Yeah,
yeah, but we're
that's
we're
true.
never gonna be represented by the politicians because they've got bigger fish to fry. Like they'll give lip service to us, but
Yeah,
they're too busy doing their thing, and it's a rat race. It's just a rat
that's right.
race. Yeah.
That's right.
So I tell I
Absolutely.
tell my I tell my wife not to put her hope in princes because you're going to get disappointed. If you get excited about a politician like Trump or whoever, they're going to disappoint you. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Always
Guar-
happens. The same
guar-
thing.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. But
Guaranteed.
we have to keep our eyes on the prize, Christ and his church and God in
That's right.
heaven and the saints, and that's where it's at. So, in terms of the ups and downs spiritually, uh, I
Mhm.
know it's a sensitive topic, but did you go through any dark times, like in puberty, for example? Did you stray from the faith or get rebellious with sex, drugs, and rock and roll and all those sorts of temptations?
You know what, David? I went through all those phases, but I never really left the church.
Okay.
The church, the church was always important to me, and I think it was the church that pulled me through those. When you get sidetracked,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get sidetracked here and there, and the church always pulled me through. So I never really. I was always there. The church was always there for me, and I was always there for the church. I never really left the church.
Nice.
I wasn't like the model Catholic, but I was like, sometimes I was the wheat and sometimes I was the tares, but I was but
Yeah.
I was there, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's what Jesus said. Don't uproot the
That's right.
weeds. There's a good reason for that, because we
Good
all go through
reason,
that. We go through that. We're all going through that. And just look at
for
Saint
sure.
Peter. Look at Saint Peter. He'd be like, within 10 minutes, he'd go back and forth between a tare and a wheat. You know, we're
Absolutely.
very unstable, and our hearts are, you know, tricky things. A human being with our free will. God gave us free will, but
Yeah,
it's a very dangerous affair, this life that we've been given, eh?
it is. It is. You just got to hang in there. You just got to keep at it.
Yeah,
Keep
and
at it.
we need to. One of my favorite saints is Faustina, Sister
Yes.
Faustina, with the Divine
Yes.
Mercy. And at the parish that I go to, there's a nice image of the Divine
Yeah.
Mercy, and
I know all about
uh,
it. Yeah.
it's powerful. It's a powerful image for a great sinner like me, where I can just focus on Christ and His mercy, and forget about obsessing about my shortcomings or my sins, or the struggles to be virtuous, or these sorts of things, and just
That's right.
focus on the mercy of
That's good. Yeah.
God. It's amazing. Have you
It
read a
sounds
lot? Have you read a lot of the lives of the saints and the writings of the saints? Were you ever into that sort of study side of the walk with God?
Yeah, I kind of, I actually, I'm more of philosophical. I'm
Okay.
more of like, I like, I like Dostoevsky,
Yeah.
and I like Nicholas Berdyaev, and
Yeah.
I'm in Tolstoy. So I
Ah.
really, I really got into Russian
Yeah.
philosophy.
Yeah.
Catholic saints. I read Padre Pio.
Okay.
I read Bishop Sheen.
Okay.
Um, like, uh, there's other ones, but I'm mostly a philosophical type,
Yeah. Nice. Beautiful.
and I like
And
that.
you have a penchant for the East, for the Eastern Orthodox types.
I I have a penchant for the East. Yeah, I do. But um, I'm, I've gone to the up here in the Sioux. I I did attend the Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Okay.
Like the Ukrainian Church here is under the Pope of Rome. Okay, like
Oh, really?
the yeah, like there
Oh,
are. I'm not sure what like there's. I think they call them unions,
Unit.
but
Okay.
it's
Okay. Yeah.
but
Nice.
yeah. So it wasn't like if I went to the like if I like like in the Serbian Orthodox Church is not under the Pope of
Right. Or
Rome.
the Greek Orthodox Church or the Russian Orthodox Church. That would be not in
Yeah,
communion with Rome. Right.
yeah,
Right. 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 Okay. So there's a Uniate Ukrainian Orthodox Church in Sault Ste. Marie.
yes. But I I left it for a while. I went back to the Roman Catholic Church. I liked the liturgy there, but the reason I left the Ukrainian church for a while is because of the war. And
Oh,
I I really didn't want to get caught up in the politics in the church.
yeah.
I just didn't want to do it.
Yep.
So I just bailed out for a while. I just thought it would be the best thing because it's just, like Ukrainian people are very, very nationalistic and, they love their country. And so I don't know. I just thought, you know what, this isn't going to be about worship right now. So plus my wife, who's a Roman Catholic, she did not want to go to the Orthodox Church because she didn't understand the liturgy.
I
So
see.
she wasn't, and it was only fair. Like
Yeah.
I'd go by myself, and then I'd go on Saturday, and then we'd go to the Roman Catholic Church on Sunday. But my wife, like I'm not gonna. My wife and I, the Roman Catholic Church is our home. That's
Yeah.
our home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
Roman Catholic. That's bottom line.
Latin right.
Latin right, yeah.
Yeah, and you're in and out fast. It's 45 minutes. Right?
Yeah, that's why I used to like the Latin low mass. It was quick.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I sat through and stood through some Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox liturgies. Beautiful, beautiful chanting and everything. But oh my God, it's long. It's long.
It's long.
It's
It's long,
just,
but
I need to have more patience and to be more dedicated to worship, and everything's on my terms. Like, okay, I'll do my little morning prayers, my evening prayers, but I sort of resent it. It's like,
yeah.
hey, this is my time. Why am I giving my time to God? I should be having fun right now. I should be doing what I want to do. You know,
Yeah. Yep.
it's the ultimate rebellion that we all have. We all have it inside of us. We just want
Yeah.
to just do our thing.
Yeah. Mind you, the priest at the Ukrainian church, he's actually he moved to I think he's in St. Catharines now,
Okay.
but he was a beautiful man, Father Jerry Lazoric, just a great priest. I really really loved him. That was probably one of the main reasons I was there. He was
Uh,
such a good priest. I really
wow.
miss him. Yeah.
What language was it, in English?
It was English. The English mass was at 11, and then the Ukrainian mass was at 9:30.
Did you ever try going in the Ukrainian language just to see what the singing was like?
Oh yeah, I went. A couple of times I went to the Ukrainian liturgy because I just because I had something else to do, so I went there, and it's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
it's nice, and you can just follow the liturgy, and some
Yeah.
of the words you start,
You start to recognize the patterns.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's I like the Byzantine liturgy because it is very reverent,
Yeah.
and it's because we don't have a Latin mass here
Oh,
anymore.
no? Oh,
No, we do. All we have is not to say that the Novus Ordo isn't good, but there's no Latin mass
yeah.
in Sault Ste. Marie.
What's your population there now?
It's about 70,000 in the city.
Do you feel uh do you remember to remind yourself that your city is named after Saint Mary, the Mother of God?
I don't remember to remind myself, but it is, and that yeah, Sault Ste. Marie is Mary is named after Mary.
You should
That's
be
right.
proud of that. You should be
I'm very proud of that.
taking advantage of that. Remember that. That's very exciting.
Very, very
You know about Montreal, the history of Montreal, right?
not a whole bunch. No, not
It's
much.
Ville Marie, the city of
Okay.
Mary. That's the original
Oh,
name.
beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the original name. And there's a little old neighborhood that still has that name, like the district, like voting districts, you know, the different voting districts that they have for
Oh,
municipal
yeah.
elections and stuff like that. So they still call that area Ville Marie. And so it's the city of Mary. And of
Mhm.
course, we have St. Joseph's Oratory here, which I highly recommend that everyone come to Montreal to go to St. Joseph's Oratory.
I love that.
St. Brother Andre Bessette. Have you heard about him?
Heard of him?
He
Yes.
did a
No, I
lot of
don't know much about him, but
miracles,
I heard.
a lot of
Yeah.
miracles for healing. Okay, so if you
Mhm.
come into the oratory, it's huge, but there are many things to see, and his body is there, and his heart is
Yeah.
exposed in a glass jar. But one of the things you can see are many, many, many crutches of people that were crippled allegedly and came in and got healed by him through the
Really.
intercession of Saint Joseph. It's Saint Joseph's Oratory because he had a devotion to Saint Joseph. So he gave all the glory to Joseph, and Saint Joseph gave all the glory to God. So that's just the way it works with the saints, right? Like the saints are always passing the buck up, upwards to towards Christ, and we don't we don't take credit. None of us take credit for any of the good that we have received because if we've received it, how can we boast, right? Like that's what St. Paul says,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, the priests when we moved to Ontario, to Fort Francis, Ontario, the priests were almost all French, and they belonged to a an order, the Oblates of something.
Okay,
But the priests always used to come to our house.
really
Okay, yeah. Well, the priests would come, and we'd have dinner together, and we'd
nice,
laugh and joke, and I mean, we had like the priests and the people had a really good relationship.
nice.
Yeah,
Wow, that's the way it's
yeah.
supposed to be. If you read the Catechism, if you read canon law, if you
Hmm.
read any of the official documents of the Church, the
Yeah,
documents of Vatican II, everything is telling us that the priest has to be in touch with his flock, with his parish. And it
yeah,
doesn't matter if they're Catholic or not. It doesn't matter if they're even Christian, if they're atheist, whatever, Muslims, Jews,
yeah,
they're your flock, this parish, they're your people. You have to know them, you have to go and visit them. That's what is supposed to be happening. But sadly, these priests are overworked, and I don't know if they're underpaid, but they're certainly overworked. And there's a crisis in the church in Canada. I don't know about the other countries, but it's a major
yeah.
crisis of faith, and attendance is low, and the coffers are empty, and the buildings are in disrepair. And there's
Mm.
graffiti. You know, 3 weeks in a row, we had graffiti on our front door of our parish church here, and they have to
Oh, really?
put another coat of paint on the door. Soon the door is going to be 6 feet thick with paint because it's
Oh,
just
brother.
they got to repaint the graffiti, and it's satanic, hateful graffiti every time.
Actually, in the Sioux, the, the people in the Sioux, people are very respectful of the churches. There's been a couple of incidents, but for the most part, it's they're respectful. But the priests now, what they do, and I know they're really busy, is they give you the birthday call now. Have you
Okay.
got the
No,
birthday?
no, no, no.
It's kind of like when the insurance guy calls you and
Okay.
wishes you, which is nice. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not knocking, but
Of course, of course.
that's what they do now.
Okay. That's
They
cool.
don't visit your house much anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially during COVID. I mean, I think they should have come around during COVID, especially because it's the big plague and whatever. But
Yeah, big plague.
oh, I don't want to get too deep into that, the
No,
conspiracy
forget about
theories.
that.
Forget
Yeah,
about that. But anyway,
yeah,
let's just hope it's behind us. You know,
yeah, I sure hope so.
I don't know what's ahead of us, but let's hope that's behind us.
Yeah, I know.
We're
I
living in
know.
crazy times. You know, a lot of my guests have suggested to me recently, Christian guests have suggested that, you know, we are in the end times, and I talk to Protestants, and they have different ideas about the end times and when the
Yeah.
second coming is going to happen, and the tribulation and, the Satan overplaying his hand and coming out and
Yeah.
exposing himself, and the
Yeah.
Antichrist is coming and all these sorts of things, and the preparation for the Antichrist and all these sorts of things, and the mark of the beast. Um, as a Catholic, we have a pretty relaxed attitude toward the end times. Like, we know Jesus is coming, we don't know when, and we don't make a
Yeah.
big fuss about it. We just have to every day be cognizant of the fact that
Right.
we have to keep our eyes on the prize, like I keep saying. But
Yeah.
in general terms, how do you feel about the acceleration of technology, and the politics is just crazy in our world today? You lived through a lot, because you said you're 66.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've
60.
lived through a lot of changes. I'm 53, so
Mhm.
I'm not that much younger than you.
Yeah.
But we've lived through a lot of changes. If we look back even 30 years,
Hmm.
there've been a lot of changes, and I don't really feel like it's changes for the better generally overall. I don't want to be too
Hmm.
dark and gloomy about it, but
Hmm.
what's your impression looking back?
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's really for the better. Like there's, I mean, obviously with, the technology and like things like pornography
Oh
and
God, yeah.
everything. So in that sense, yeah, it's tough. It's tougher, but like we've got to, you know we got to forge forward. We got to be more creative. We got to, like we just have to. We can't despair.
Yeah.
It's I got it. My dad my dad used to get into these depressions when he saw, like, like, when in the 60s and stuff, when you had that going on, and
Vatican II?
like, no, not Vatican
Oh,
II,
the
but
sexual revolution.
yeah, the sexual revolution. And I mean, a lot of Catholics were getting, like, upset, like they saw the culture. Then you had contraception, and then you had
Mm,
abortion, and you
mm.
had a lot more
Yeah,
divorce,
of
and
course.
like, so people saw the culture kind of getting out of hand, and they get depressed about it. But I think that we shouldn't have been. I think we shouldn't got too. We shouldn't have been too depressed. We should have
We
been
should
able to get out of that.
we should have enjoyed
For,
all the good music from the 60s. That's the best
yeah,
music I've ever heard. That's the best music ever. Come on, it's the best. You
yeah,
agree?
like,
You agree?
yeah, like I do. Like when I look at the '60s now, I think to myself, geez, at least in the '60s there was an anti-war movement.
Anti-establishment, anti-war,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. I always had a sort of like a hippie vibe, like where I thought peace and love and all that sort of thing. It's a bit naive, when you think back on it, but there is some small amount of truth to the caricature of Jesus, or the caricature of Saint Francis of Assisi. That
hmm
there's that hippie vibe, peace and love. There is a kernel of truth to that. It's just
there
blown
is.
out. It's blown out of all proportion, obviously,
It
right?
is. It is. It's like, what I wanted to mention to you was, because I thought about this and I wanted to talk to you about it, is one one of the guests the other night when you were talking, the guy who's the Protestant preacher.
The born
Um,
again guy.
yeah, well, he used to be Catholic, right?
Yeah,
Andre, is that his name?
Andre
Andre.
Rose. He's in Timmins. Is
Yeah.
Timmins far from you?
No, Timmins. Is that where he's from?
Yeah, he's in Timmins.
Oh, he's in Timmins.
He's in Timmins now. Yeah,
Oh,
you
well,
could go
anyway,
visit him.
yeah, yeah.
He's
Anyway,
very he's very anti-Catholic, but maybe you can help him.
well, what, he said something that was very, very interesting. Um, and he said that when he was a Catholic as a young boy, and he was going to the Catholic Church, he went through all the sacraments and everything, but he didn't really understand what it was all about. And I'm going to tell you, David, a lot of Catholics, we didn't understand what the church was about. Okay, in other words, we got our sacraments, but we didn't understand how the church is supposed to heal us.
Right.
Okay, we just went through the motions. And when he said that, I kind of thought to myself, you know what? I can understand, that, and that's kind of the thing that I went through now is you know, the Catholic faith is beautiful, but you have to understand what these sacraments are for and what they're supposed to do, and like, and also things like marriage. Like, we never were really taught in the church what marriage was. Okay, what it meant. You know, it was like, we didn't really understand the nitty gritty. And I think that what happened is that's why a lot of Catholics fell away, because they saw God, like I told you when I was young. Okay, God was this guy who was just ready to send you to hell.
Mm,
Okay, like if you messed up, you were done.
mm,
Okay, and I think a lot of people got uptight about that. They 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 said, I don't want to be in a church where this God is gonna, if I screw up, I'm gonna go to hell, that kind of thing. So the consciousness of the Catholic has changed. Okay, and I forgot to tell you that one of my brothers was in the seminary.
oh,
Okay, yeah, and we talk about this all the time, and we talk about how the Catholic consciousness is, you know, it's changing. It's like people aren't, they're not ready for the hardcore um, hell and brimstone kind of thing. Like, that's what we got when we were young.
uh,
Okay, and I think things have changed. I think people don't. I think a lot of the older Catholics or the newer Catholics that came into the church aren't kind of buying that anymore.
I see.
The
I see.
like, hey, this idea, but not to say that hell doesn't exist, but what is hell? What is heaven? What is like all these things. A lot of people say, look, I don't want these rules. I don't want this crap. You know, that's not who God is. So
It has to
you know
be,
what I'm saying?
it has to be organic, and it has to be organically connected to our humanity and
Hmm.
everything that we naturally value. And I
Yeah.
understand that because I came from atheism into Catholicism, having been
Right.
studying philosophy, and I was prepared, by God, I would say, and just by my own interests and my own
Right.
predisposition, I was prepared, and I was predisposed to understand intellectually what the church is, what it teaches, what the sacraments are, and what they're there for, and the healing, and the
Hmm.
the mercy of God in spite of hell, and the mercy of God that's implied by hell, and that everything is grace, and that
Hmm.
the evils that are misattributed to God by those who don't understand God are scary to those who are maybe investigating religion or thinking about joining the church or whatever. People are on a wild journey in life, and they're busy with a million and one things, and religion is one of the things that they're playing with and that they're struggling with. And to have so many black legends about the church, and so many notions of God being a severe, strict judge, and not a loving and compassionate and merciful Father. With all of this milling about the individual
Hmm.
as they try to find their way in the world, it's no wonder that they're turned off. It's no wonder that they're confused. And I don't blame anyone. It just so happens
Hmm.
that I studied very deeply. I read a lot. And so I didn't
Hmm.
have any of the insecurities. And the other thing is that my life was a selfish life. I didn't have
Hmm.
kids, and
Hmm.
I was just living the life of a basically like a bum slash mafia guy, criminal guy,
Hmm.
just living day to day, doing whatever. and living
Mm-hmm.
like a bum artist, whatever. And so I had a lot of time on my hands and I didn't have any responsibility. So I was able to focus on philosophy and reading and studying. And so when I came into the church, because I lived such a selfish life, I had answered all the problems, all the questions about God and the problem of evil and all these sorts of things. But the people who are good, hardworking, responsible adults, unlike me, those people, they're off balance in a million different ways because of all the strings that they have attached to their responsibilities. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
blame anyone. I don't I completely understand, and God has a plan also for them for how they can come to understand what I understood through my reading and through my meditation just on philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but everyone is on a very unique trajectory, and
Absolutely.
it's all very complicated. But we're here, we're here to help each other. And the image that I like is what St. Paul said about the hand. The hand is not the eye, and the eye needs the hand, and the hand needs the ear,
Mm-hmm.
and the ear needs the nose. And we can all work
Yeah.
together in the body of Christ, and we all play different but valuable, very valuable roles, right? So
Well, like when you were talking, what I liked about you is when you were the other day you were talking about Justin Trudeau, and you were saying that, look, Justin Trudeau can be this or that, but the bottom line is we have to pray for him and we have to hope that he comes back to the church, and we have to, and that's what impressed me about you is that, and plus I liked your podcast because you were interviewing everyday people.
yeah,
You were, especially that one guy. He was Matthew something.
Matthew Murdoch, and he's going
Yeah,
through a hard time.
that was a beautiful.
Beautiful man.
That's really what the faith is all about, and that's what drew me to this podcast. As I said, this guy is for real.
Thank you very much.
You know,
Were you a fan of Alex Christoforou? Is that how you discovered my channel?
yeah. I
He's a nice guy, eh?
He's a great guy, and then he was the Greek connection, hey?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, you've heard enough of my podcast now that you know my wife is Greek, and
Yeah, yeah. Was she
yeah.
Greek Orthodox? Was
Well,
she
culturally, I don't know.
culturally?
I don't know
Okay.
what she believes. She doesn't practice anything, but I don't know what she believes. She plays her hand close to her chest there, with the cards close to her chest.
Wow,
And
that's fine.
yeah, that's the way she is. She's always been like that, so I respect that. But
Yeah.
but Alex, he's very, very, very popular with the middle-aged women. I've get so many comments on his interview saying, "Hey, why isn't he married? Like, what's going on?" They can't believe that he doesn't meet a wife. They love him. Does your wife like him?
My wife and I do not share the same political, like we is it,
Oh.
my wife and I we're very together on the faith.
Yeah.
Like I wanted my wife to do a podcast with you too,
Yeah.
because she grew up Roman Catholic she's Italian, from the Italian background,
Ooh.
and that's a beautiful, beautiful tradition.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I are together on the faith, but we're not together on politics.
Well, the faith is more important. So,
More important.
yeah.
That's right.
So anyway, you must eat very well.
Oh yeah.
What'd you have for dinner tonight, for example?
Well, actually, what we had for dinner tonight is I made dinner because my wife
Oh.
she broke her leg a
Oh.
couple of years ago. So
Oh.
I've been doing a little bit of the Hello Fresh thing. You
Okay.
know? And it's kind of
Oh.
neat.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
tonight we had some sort of Chinese dish.
Okay. The ingredients arrive and you mix them together, and that's
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, I do that once in a while. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Does she like it?
Oh yeah, she liked it.
Okay. But when she was on two legs there, was she cooking you spaghetti and all kinds of good stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They come, her parents were, like they weren't from Italy, but I
Oh.
mean, they did all the cultural Italian,
Ethnically, what were they?
they were Italian, but they they did like they weren't right from Italy. They weren't off the boat.
I see.
They were, you know what I
I
mean?
see. They're Canadian Italians.
They were Canadian, yeah, but
Ah,
they lived the Italian
they were still
culture.
proud. They were still proud.
That's right. And they made the wine and the salami and
Oh,
all that good
tomato
stuff.
sauce,
Yeah.
tomatoes, canned tomatoes. Did you, is your wife loud? Like, is she very loud and
No,
no?
no, not at all.
No? Okay.
She's very reserved.
Oh, really?
She's
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she's I mean, she's, she can be a
Fiery?
spitfire, but
She could be
yeah.
fiery?
Oh yeah, but I mean, we raised 4 children. She raised, and she worked. She was a social worker. She was a frontline social worker
Oh, okay. Tough lady,
in
tough lady.
child protection. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Wow, that's some dark, heavy stuff. Wow.
heavy. It was heavy. Yeah, real heavy.
Wow. How did she hurt her leg? Do you mind telling us?
You know what, David? I'm not sure, but her leg got weak, and one day she just slipped
Oh, God.
and broke it, and then 6 months later she broke it again.
Oh, my God.
But now she's on the rebound,
Okay.
and she's doing good now.
Tell her third time's not the charm. Don't break it a third time. I like Roman Polanski's dark movies. He had made one called The Tenant, where it's a very, very dark movie. I don't know if you want to watch it, but anyway, he ends up breaking his bones multiple times jumping out of the window of this apartment. It's just really
Oh, really?
devastating. It's devastating. My wife and I,
Okay.
we do enjoy watching horror movies, even though it's a bit satanic. But we like we
Yeah.
just watched The Shining by Kubrick, and but generally speaking, we don't watch a lot of movies. We liked The Wizard of Oz. I grew up watching that one. I don't know if you watched that one, The
Oh,
Wizard of Oz.
absolutely.
We like 10 Little Indians. Do you remember the black and white movie where it's Agatha Christie,
No.
where they
Is
get
that a good
murdered one
one?
by one? Yeah, it's very good. But that's another thing about our culture. Culture seems to be losing it. Like you mentioned it, that we're not as creative as we used to be. If you think about the good old days
Yeah.
in film, my God, they used to have an attention span, the audience, so they could actually tell a story,
Yeah.
in an actual linear fashion where they introduce the scenario, they introduce the characters, and it's slow, but it makes sense. Today, I don't know what they're doing when they make a movie today. It just doesn't seem to have substance. Or maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, my wife, I don't watch television that much.
Yeah.
I I watch podcasts and bloggers and guys like you.
Yeah.
But my wife is really into Korean movies,
Oh, no way.
Korean shows now. She's
Ah,
heavy into it, and
ah.
she loves it.
Does she
She
speak
loves
the
it.
language
No, but she watches these Korean shows.
with
Okay,
subtitles?
yeah, with subtitles. And it was funny though. The other night I was watching one, and it made me cry.
Ah.
It was one of those tear jerkers, and
Ah.
but she really loves the Korean shows,
Was it
loves
a
them.
love story that made you cry?
You know what? Yeah, it was kind of yeah, it was, you know what it was about? It was about two sisters, and one was mentally retarded,
Oh,
and she was disabled, and how they kind of went through life together, and you know how that goes. Like she
oh,
was, ashamed of her, and those kind of things, and it
oh.
showed how they went through life together, and it was a good movie.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. It's a pro-life movie.
Hmm.
Wow. You know,
And the Koreans a lot of Koreans are Catholic. I didn't know that. I mean,
oh,
you'll see the Catholic, they're in the church sometimes, and there's Catholic stuff in it. So I didn't know the Koreans were Catholic, so.
I like their language. I did study Korean a little bit.
Oh, did you?
안녕하세요.
Oh,
That's about the only word I remember right now, but anyway, just means hello. But
yeah,
it's got a beautiful script, and
yeah,
they are very, very dignified, nice, gentle people, generally speaking. They just
yeah.
seem like a really, really nice people. Not to overgeneralize, of course. We know they're
Hmm.
they're a bunch
Yeah,
of a-holes mixed into the population too, like anywhere else, right?
Right. Right.
But I love all the different cultures. This is the strange thing about politics. I don't want to talk too much about it, but when they
Yeah.
start talking about racism and all this, I just don't buy it. I don't believe it. And it's the most ignorant thing to look
Hmm.
down on an entire culture, an entire race, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the most ignorant thing, and you have to be a real numbskull to buy into that, to actually to have hatred for some group of people because they look different or
Yeah.
whatever, or their food, you don't like their food, or whatever. But there's so much richness and beauty in our world, in the cultures, and being a Catholic, like you said, with the Italian Catholic culture and the Korean Catholic culture, and go to
Hmm.
Africa and check out, like, if you saw where Pope Francis was.
Yeah.
There's so much richness, so much beauty, so much culture, the food, the music, the costumes, the customs, everything is just so amazing. I don't know why everyone isn't in love with that and excited about that, and that the politicians are turning us against each other and saying, oh, the blacks hate the whites. And nonsense. I don't think blacks hate whites and whites hate
No.
blacks. No.
No. No. That's all baloney. Like I listened to I listened to I listened to a lot of Jewish I listened to one Jewish rabbi, and he made a good point one day. He said, it's not about us getting to heaven, it's about us bringing God down to earth.
Uh-huh.
And I thought to myself, even though I know the Jews don't believe in the Messiah, but you know what? In the Catholic faith, we have that because Jesus sent us the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit. So what are we crying about? You
Uh-huh.
know, like God's here with us, the
Yeah.
Spirit, the Holy Spirit, who's God, right?
And the Eucharist.
And the Eucharist, yeah. So we don't have any reason to be, we should be excited, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
excited about our faith, excited about who are we? Like when he talked about being a Jew, it wasn't, he said the Jew, it's not a religion, it's who we are,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like that's how we got to be as Catholics.
Yeah.
It's not a religion, it's who we are,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Exactly. It's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting to be
It's
part of the
exciting, yeah.
body, the body of Christ. And I want to talk with you a little bit about Pope Francis, because I really do sincerely like him and love him, and I'm inspired by him. But a lot of Catholics today, they don't like him and they disrespect him publicly, which I find is not good.
It's
And
bad.
there are a lot
It's
of,
bad.
so-called conservative Catholics, radical
Hmm.
traditionalists, and these sorts of things. And they're nice people, they're really good people, and they value tradition, which I think is good. But it's the Pope bashing that I want to talk about with you. And I
Yeah.
also want to talk about how he's touched you. How has Pope Francis touched you in a positive way? So maybe start with the negative and then go to the positive.
Well, I think Pope Francis, when he took that name, Francis, okay, that was something in itself,
Yeah.
because Francis was, he was the real deal,
Yeah.
you know. He was the he was a great Catholic. So, Francis took that name. So, like, I, I guess I'll refer to the guest you had earlier, the guy who talked about Pope Francis. What a,
Adrian, was it Adrian?
Adrian, yeah, Adrian,
Yeah.
who he said that people don't understand how much how much stress he's under, and
Yeah.
what he's got to do, and they don't understand, like, what's going on. But I'm with you. You should never disrespect the Pope. That disrespect the office of the Pope, so to speak. He's the vicar of Christ. He's, you know to bash him is not good, because that causes scandal. It scandalizes Catholics, and they'll say, well, that Pope's no good, so the church is no good. The next thing like, hey, but positively, I think Pope Francis, like, and I don't really follow him closely, but I've followed some of his scripture writing. I think he's a master at scripture, at discerning scripture, and that. So I've read a few of his articles,
Okay.
and I think he's got a wonderful way about him.
Yeah.
I think people just don't like Pope Francis because they think it's this gay thing. Okay,
They're insecure about their manhood. That's what it is.
like forget about the gay thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Forget about that. They're obsessed with it. Yeah, well, it's true what they say about the conservatives are obsessed with sex. It's true. It is true. But I mean, we all are. I mean, just let's face it. The men are anyway. I don't know about the women, but anyway.
Yeah, like, geez, like, I mean, yeah, well, that's,
The whole thing with religion is it's the most intimate thing. Men get excited about women, but that's supposed to be just a very small glimpse of heaven, the beauty of the woman and the intimacy we can have with the woman and the marriage and the family and the kids and all that. It's just an image of the Holy Family and the life we're going to have with God. That intimacy, and the saints talk about that intimacy, and it can make you uncomfortable to think about intimacy on the human plane, or even to think about intimacy with God. It can make you uncomfortable because we live in a fallen world. Sadly, it's like our first parents fell from grace, unfortunately.
yeah,
But we do say, "Oh, happy fault," that Adam
right.
and Eve fell so that we could have the Redeemer come. And then there's the Franciscan school, speaking of Francis, where they teach that
Oh,
Christ would have come anyway. So that's up for
yeah.
debate, But I choose to believe that I lean toward the Franciscan school when it comes to the absolute primacy of Christ, and that he would have incarnated with or without the fall of Adam and Eve.
What I wanted to ask you, David, is get your thoughts on, because you said a word that tweaked my interest, and that's intimacy.
Yeah.
I think people they throw this word love around,
Uh,
um, but they don't throw the word intimacy around.
uh,
And I was going to ask you, so what do you mean by intimacy? Like, what does that word mean to
authentic,
you?
authentic openness, like where you're giving a complete gift of self to the other, a mutual
Yeah.
giving of self. This is, if
Okay.
you read, you're a fan of Saint John Paul II, right?
Right.
And he did the
Yeah.
theology of the body, and I haven't studied it very intensely, but I've just sort of encountered it here
Yeah.
and there and have a rough idea about it. I should look into it more. But the idea of this mutual self-giving that's supposed to be in marriage between a
Right.
man and a woman that are not closely related and these sorts of things. This is how marriage is
Hmm.
defined. And so intimacy is that, you are letting someone in and you're
Hmm.
giving yourself to them and vice versa, and there's no holding back. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing where you get to know the person. And, when it comes to dating and hookup culture, it's like the guys are packing on, they're bloating themselves up with muscles, artificial muscles that don't serve any purpose, and they don't look good, in my opinion. You
Right.
see a healthy, strong man, his body is proportioned in an appropriate
Hmm.
way and he has functional strength. But these guys are
Right.
bloated at the gym and it just serves no purpose and it's stupid looking.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
women are putting in fake lips and fake eyes, lashes and fake
Yeah.
hair and fake boobs and fake
Yeah.
buttocks and fake everything. And I'm turned off. Sorry. Like, I mean, you're not trying to attract me anyway because I'm happily married. But the point is, like, it's not attractive. If you want to see a beautiful
Right.
woman, it's someone who's simple and, you know, just has those the qualities of a woman, like it talks about in the Bible, with her humility and with her virtue and these sorts of things. That's what's attractive. you know
Hmm.
so today, my point here with this is that
Hmm.
we're putting up all these walls by having the perfect physique, which I think looks stupid. The men
Hmm.
have a perfect physique, which I think looks stupid, and the women have a perfect physique, which I think looks stupid. But somehow they think it's attractive, and they're hooking up with each other, and they're not revealing their inner wounds and their weaknesses and their vulnerabilities. And so they're not actually being intimate with each other. They're just rubbing their body parts together. And it's like they know it's not fulfilling. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hooking up every other night with a different partner, right? So they know it's
Hmm.
not fulfilling. If it were fulfilling, then they would be fulfilled, but it's not fulfilling. That's why it's just this hookup culture. And I'm just speaking very generally with a broad brush here. There are people that are,
Hmm.
good people that are able to be intimate and that are able to have lasting relationships and stuff like that. But I'm just speaking very generally that if you
Yeah.
compare our day and age today with the, I don't know, the 40s or 50s, I have no idea, but it seems like if you go by what the how the movies portray it, people used to have principles and they used to have dignity and these sorts of things. I don't know. It was probably just as bad then. They just maybe hid their sins a little bit better. I don't know. But we were talking about the sexual revolution in the 60s. It seems to have opened up a floodgate with the contraception and all the things that come with that, and the abortion and the divorce, all the things that you mentioned. And it seems that we've lost touch with our authentic self and the ability to have that intimacy. I find it very, very tragic.
It is tragic. Like I remember I was listening to a guy and he said, when you're sitting at home and your wife's gone away, say she's gone away for a conference or whatever, and you're sitting at home and you miss her. Okay. And he said, well, what do you miss? And he says, you just miss her. You don't miss anything about her, but you just miss her. And when you love somebody, you just love her. Not anything about her. Not that she can make good lasagna or
Yeah.
I love her. That's it.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing when you think about a human being. It's an infinite mystery. Like I've been married 27 years. I'm coming up now, like I said to my previous guest, coming up to my 10,000th day of marriage on March 13th or so. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna celebrate that. But it's just like she's my best
Yeah.
friend. She's my better half. And
Hmm.
how long you been married?
I've been married. I got married in '82.
Oh,
So well, do the math. Let's see.
30, whatever.
Around 40 years.
40 years. Wow. Wow. How old's your eldest?
He's gonna be 40 soon.
There you go. So you probably had him in
Yeah,
the
I had
first
him when I
year
was,
or in the first year.
yeah, yeah, right. Heck, right away.
Hence the marriage. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
It wasn't a shotgun affair, no.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, I feel sorry not to put myself on a pedestal like, oh, I'm so much better than the kids today. No, but it is true that if you've never experienced long-term relationship with the opposite sex, a faithful relationship with the opposite sex, if you never experienced that, it's just like you don't know what you're missing. Like it's better. Like there are obviously highs and lows in every relationship and their challenges, and we came close to divorce a couple of times, not least of which was when I became Catholic. She really hates the Catholic Church. But
Hmm.
we survived. We survived, and thank God for
Survived.
that. And because we survived, then I'm able to live this deeper phase of the ongoing relationship. But if you keep changing your spouse or changing your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, if you keep changing when things go bad, then you're just reliving those shallow waters and you're not experiencing the calm depths of the deep commitment and love and attachment and mutual self-giving and all the self-sacrifice and all these sorts of things that come with time. It is like a fine wine aged to perfection. Not that there's anything, if you were to watch video footage of my entire marriage relationship, you wouldn't be like excited, or you wouldn't necessarily enjoy watching it, because it's a very subtle thing
Yeah.
between two human beings. It's like, I love her, she loves me, God knows why. I don't know why. you know People, there was a woman at our wedding, believe it or not. When we came out, we actually got married we were both atheists, so we got married in a court of law. And
Hmm.
we came out of the main hall where we got married into the reception hall, and my best friends and my best man's girlfriend at the time, she was standing there in the line where we were shaking hands with everyone, and they were giving us, saying their nice little words to us, congratulations, and so on and so forth. And all she said to me is, "It's never gonna last." That's what she told me at my wedding. She told me at the wedding, "It's never gonna last." And that was her honest opinion, because she didn't see it. She didn't see it. I don't know why she
Yeah.
had to tell me, but she didn't see it.
Well, you fooled her, hey?
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the main motivations to stay together, is because she said, not kidding. But my
Yeah.
point, my
Well,
my point with the story here is that we really can't see from the outside what's going on in a relationship. Is something very well, intimate. I guess that's the key word, right? It's an intimate thing, and there's this thing called chemistry, right? And you have it or you don't. And my wife and I, we watch a lot of stupid reality TV, and there are a lot of love
yeah.
stories. A lot of love stories, and the bottom line is, I can see when two people meet, I can see right away if they have chemistry or not. I could see if they have chemistry or not. And
Yeah. That means a lot.
there is such a thing as chemistry, but you have to
Hmm.
be in touch. You have to be in tune. You have to be honest with yourself. Like, 'cause I'll be honest with you. When I met my wife, I thought, no way, no way am I going to get romantically involved with this woman. She's too crazy. She's too weird. She's too
Hmm.
outlandish. But she
Right.
pursued me, and she pursued me, and she pursued me, and she got me. And that's a true story. But
Yeah.
we met, and 3 months later we were married.
Good.
So
That sounds great. You know what I wanted to ask you, David, is um, I read this philosopher Berdyaev, and
yeah, yeah.
he does talk about marriage a lot, and he says that many Catholic or many marriages are not mystical. And
Mm,
one of the things he said is, and unfortunately the Catholic Church has kind of fallen into this trap, is marriage has become some sort of economic
contract.
contract. Yeah, like, and it hasn't been mystical,
Mm,
and it's sort of like, oh, you got to have a whole bunch of kids, and like you got to have it's all about it turns into kind of a materialistic thing,
yeah.
and it's not mystical, and not and his point is that the he doesn't think that most marriages aren't mystical. Most marriages are just like, that's why he was against the Catholic Church's position on divorce. He thought it was cruel
Ah,
be, because he said that these marriages weren't really mystical anyway,
ah, ah,
and why would you allow these people to go through torture of
ah.
marriage when it wasn't a mystical marriage, if you
Yeah.
get what I mean?
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, 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 for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, that's heavy. That's very heavy to contemplate that. And I do agree. I do agree, but I also, I submit to
Mhm.
the church, but
Yeah.
there's also the thing about annulment, like there never was a proper marriage. That's very often the case. It's very often the case that the marriage wasn't entered into in a proper with a proper attitude. And even
Right.
among
Right.
Catholics, like I've met a couple of Catholics who uh, came to the church, to my parish, to get one of the sacraments in order to get married. It was just part of the process. And
Hmm.
I remember I spoke with one lady, and I was so excited for her,
Hmm.
uh, because she was, I think, was she either baptized or confirmed? But she just basically admitted to me that, like, this is just a necessary step for the
Yeah.
marriage, and there wasn't the thrill and the excitement, and there was no supernatural, mystical, vertical element to it all. It was just a worldly process, and I was a bit hurt. I was a bit disappointed, that I was sitting there in my pew, and I
Hmm.
thought I was witnessing something that was meaningful, but it turned out to not be meaningful, but maybe God has a plan for that couple, and step by step by step there will be that mystical component, and that deep religious commitment will come.
Hmm.
Just like me, I got married as an atheist, and then years
Hmm.
later years later I became religious, and now I have a different attitude towards my marriage. So the same thing is possible with these Catholics who are just going through the motions, right?
But you seem like a pretty intelligent guy. Like I hear you talk about evolution and stuff like that. What do you think in marriage? What do you think the form of the sacrament is? In other words, it's just like Berdayev was saying things like, okay, like talking about your friend there who got married and it was just out of necessity. The Catholic Church just, he says, they're just interested in the form, like just get it done. And it's so what is the form of this sacrament? What is this sacrament? Is it necessity? Is the church just, saying, look, let's just here's the form, blah, 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 and it's done. And is it really, is it really mystical? If you get what I mean, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that traditionally we're supposed to be prepared for marriage in the church, and like I said, I was atheist when I got married, so I didn't have any preparation. But for two Catholics to get married, I believe that there's an education process that they go through. I don't know if it's a few days or a week or what, but I've heard about this. And so they must know what they're getting into. And the form, like the interesting thing about the sacrament of marriage is that the priest is there basically as a witness. He's not performing the sacrament. The couple is performing the sacrament. Okay, so it's their exchange, that is the matter. And the form itself, I could look it up. I have my little book here of Catholic dogma. I don't know if you're familiar with its fundamentals, but just for fun, I'll look it up to see what the matter and the form of marriage are. But it is a true sacrament, and the ministers of the sacrament are the spouses themselves. So that's always been very interesting to me.
Yes, me too.
Let's look it up. Were you married in the Catholic Church, obviously?
Oh yes.
It's expensive getting married, but as an atheist, we were able to do a low budget marriage, which was good. Our wedding rings cost $15 each, so. Good,
but hey, you got a good deal.
I'm Scottish, right? So have you heard about us?
Yes, I have. My brother was married to one.
Oh, yeah. We're known for being cheap. But it's one of the most beautiful things, matrimony. The sacrament of matrimony. Here we go. Form. See how beautiful the Catholic Church is? I look up in my little book and I get the answer. So it's 465, page 465.
Okay.
Let's see what it actually says here. The sacrament of matrimony. Marriage was not instituted by man, but by God. This is something we've lost track of in our modern secular world. We've lost track of that. We're redefining, quote unquote, redefining marriage. It's a complete joke. Marriage is a true and proper sacrament instituted by God. The primary purpose of marriage is the generation and bringing up of offspring. The secondary purpose is the mutual help and the morally regulated satisfaction of the sex urge. The essential properties of marriage are unity, monogamy, and indissolubility. The outward sign of the sacrament of matrimony. Every valid contract of marriage between Christians is of itself a sacrament. So this is why I consider myself married, okay? Because of this dogma, which says that every valid contract of marriage between Christians, and my wife and I are both baptized Christians, okay? Even though we were atheists at the time, doesn't really matter. It is of itself a sacrament. That's a dogma of the church. The effects of sacrament of matrimony. From the sacramental contract of marriage emerges the bond of marriage, which binds both marriage partners to a lifelong, indivisible community of life. the sacrament of marriage bestows sanctifying grace on the contracting party. So there are graces that come from marriage. The minister of the sacrament of matrimony. The contracting parties in matrimony minister the sacrament to each other. The church possesses the sole and exclusive right to make laws and administer justice in the matrimonial affairs of baptized persons insofar as these affect the sacrament. So I was going to find the form, the matter and the form. That's what I'm interested in here. Matter and form. I know it's in here somewhere.
Yeah, that's because so far what you're saying, David, is it sounds like necessity to me. Like it's like, do you really think that marriage is just for having children? I mean, that's the main reason for marriage. I don't see that. I could be wrong, but doesn't the mystical marriage mean more than that?
Well, the mystical marriage is understanding because it all comes back to the analogy of like how we know God and how we know about God. So when we think about what is a mother, what is a father, what is a child, and all these sorts of things, these are shadows or types of God and the Trinity and the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Like we have these shadows of the reality. So that's why it's mystical. So when a man and a woman get married and have children, that is not the reality. The reality, that's a shadow of the real reality, which is the Holy Family. Okay. Just like with abortion, this is how I see marriage.
Right.
Just like with abortion, the abortion is not this particular woman killing this particular child in her womb. That's not abortion. That's a shadow of Satan's hatred of the incarnate word in the womb of Mary. That's what abortion is. That's how you need to see it. Abortion is mystical, right?
Yes.
Abortion is mystical. And the particular woman killing her particular baby, that's a shadow, that's a type. It points to Satan's hatred of God. So that's how I see abortion. And the same thing with marriage. It's like man, woman, child, it's all about the Holy Family, and that it's about that generative, creative outpouring of life and of love that is God. Like God is that. Like, why did God create creation? He didn't have to do it. It's because he is effusive of his goodness. His goodness naturally flows out, and it flows out of him by his free will. He chose to create a good world. He chose to create not the best world. He could have created a better world. This is a dogma of the church, by the way, that God could have created an even better world, but he created a good world. And in his wisdom, he created this world. And he's very generous in his outpouring. He gave us life. We participate in life. And our life is not our own. We are participating in God's life. It's not his very life. It is a separate life. But it is completely, like St. Paul said, we can't boast of our life because we received our life, right? And we can't boast of our virtue because we received our virtue. And St. Augustine said that when God crowns our merits, he's crowning his own gifts to us. So it's that's why everything, I can very easily see marriage as mystical, and I can very easily see abortion as mystical in a negative, horrific way. And I can see sitting down and having a meal with a friend as mystical. I can see everything as mystical because
that's a gift you have then, because a lot of people don't have that insight into those things that you do. So it's good that you share them, because like I can ask you, like that girl that was talking to you at your marriage, or you said no when you were at the marriage, and she said, well, it was necessary. So what can you define necessity? So in other words, what does necessity mean? Like like when we get necessity isn't good, it takes us away from God, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, like you talked about the imposition of religion back in the good old days, where it's just like you
Hmm.
just have to be in lockstep, otherwise you miss
Yeah,
out, like you're going to be ostracized. So, in a certain sense, this is sort of like a watered down version of that today, where this
yeah,
woman, for whatever reason, she felt like she had to become, get her
yeah,
sacraments to get the marriage. And I know people, I know like even Italians here in Montreal, who
yeah,
they get their kids baptized and whatever, and they make a big show of it and whatever, but
yeah.
they don't go to church on Sunday. It's just, they might go on Easter, they might go at Christmas, but again, it's just that show, and it's just not to belittle these people and
No,
their relationship with God, but they don't value the precepts of the church, which command us to go to church every Sunday and to take communion at least once a year at Easter time, and to confess our sins in the Easter season at least, and all these precepts of the church to support the church financially or in other ways. They don't.
it's like the rabbi said, um, when God created the world. I mean, we don't need anything, but when God created the world, He needed something. That was kind of heavy to me because okay, God, we don't need a daggone thing. God needs us. Well, no, what does that mean? That's heavy
You believe
when you
that?
think of that, huh?
You believe that?
I,
Are you
I'm
playing with
kind
the
of
idea?
I'm playing with the idea. Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying I believe it, but it it's fascinating to me.
Well, I mean, I personally reject that. I don't think that God needs
Hmm.
anything. He is perfectly happy without any conditions, and there's absolutely nothing that could ever happen that would spoil his infinite happiness. And it's in God's nature. He's incapable of sadness or anger or any perturbation or of any emotions. Now, Jesus Christ is God. He took on human flesh, so he has emotions. He has physicality. He has a physical body. He took on our humanity. He's fully God, fully man. So yes,
Right.
we could talk about God feeling and being angry and these sorts of things. Yes, we can, in the
Hmm.
case of the second person who became incarnate. But God the Father uh, doesn't need he didn't need to create us. He didn't need to incarnate. He didn't need to do anything. The only necessity in God, and this is a dogma, by the way. So, I mean,
Hmm.
if you respect the dogmas, then you'll submit to
Sure.
these. The dogmas.
Sure.
There are two dogmas that are very important here. One is that ad extra, meaning outside of the life of the Trinity,
Hmm.
in creation and all these sorts of activities of God. In all of these ad extra activities, God is
Hmm.
perfectly free. Okay. But within the life of the Trinity, everything is by necessity. Everything is by necessity for God within the life of the Trinity. So God loves himself of necessity. That's a dogma of the church.
Hmm.
God does not have a choice but to love himself of necessity. But he created us freely, and everything, every intervention that he does, every miracle that he does, is done freely. Now, we can't second guess his choices because he's infinite in every perfection, and he doesn't make any mistakes, or he doesn't repent. Who is God that he should repent? He's not a man that he should repent, right? Like it says in the Bible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think we need to be very careful about and God's a mystery,
Hmm.
so we can't pretend that we understand these things, but we should accept the teaching of Mother Church, and we should also not get too overly rigoristic or legalistic about these dogmas either, but just to respect the dogmas and to leave the mysteries intact. God acts of necessity in the life of the Trinity, but ad extra, he has perfect freedom. And so when it comes to things like going through the motions in the church requires this, so I have to pay my tithe and I have to go to church on Sunday and these sorts of things. There are two ways to view it, or there are three ways to view it actually. There are three ways to view that. I take the approach that Pascal took, which is that there are three ways. One way is that you're a slave of this cruel master,
Hmm.
right? So that's very negative. The other way is to say God's a vending machine, and if I just do X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to have prosperity.
Hmm.
I'm going to have this, and God's going to. I put in my money in the vending machine. I get out the can of soda. Bang. That's
Hmm.
that's why I go to
Hmm.
church. That's why I do my sacraments. Check, check, check. I got my checklist. Ding, 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 ding. Good Catholic. Okay, going to heaven. Ding, ding, ding. That's the second way. The third way, and the best way, the only good way, in between those two extremes, where he's got this cruel slave master or this sugar daddy, in between
Hmm.
those two
Hmm.
incorrect views is the proper way to have a relationship with God, which is to be a good child of God and to love God for God's sake, because God is goodness, God is the source of every good, and we just naturally love him. It's just natural to love the good and to be drawn to the good and to be attracted to the good and to want the good. And so
Are we
this,
entering into a marriage with Christ,
yes,
with God?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Okay. So,
absolutely.
so it's a marriage contract. Not a contract. It's
Yeah.
it's it's
No, but
it's it's
it might be a
it's marriage.
contract. It might be a contract actually, because I've read the saints where they talk about the judgment day, and Satan and the demons, and how they come forward with their with their documentation. This is what happened, Your Honor, and then I just suggested this to him, and he said yes, that's a good idea, and he did the sin. Here's the proof, and ding, 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 and that's all, Your Honor, and he leaves it in the hands of the judge, right, which is God. So that's the way Satan and the demons are in the court of justice on Judgment Day. And I mean, I'm uh, I'm exaggerating sort of the legalistic justice system type of caricature,
Yeah.
but that is how it's described. That is how it's described by the saints. That it's all very procedural and there's nothing loose about it. It's all very orderly, and God is not the God of confusion, but of order. That's why we have
Hmm.
natural science. That's why we have predictability in the natural world and these sorts of things, to a certain extent at least. There's chaos caused by the sin, and the whole of creation is groaning under the impact of the fall from grace. But it is nonetheless an orderly system that God created. So it's the same thing with Judgment Day and with Satan and his demons doing God's work. They're constantly doing God's work, and that's why He employs them. That's why He uses them to mete out His justice. And ultimately, it's what it's really about. This question of necessity that you're asking me about, what I would really
Hmm.
hang it on at the end of the day, what I would really emphasize is our free will. Okay, we truly do have a certain amount of free will. We can exercise that free will. We can use it for the good, or we can abuse it to our own peril. And that's what it comes down to. So if you're going to church for the wrong reasons, you better not to go. If you're getting baptized or confirmed for the wrong reasons, you better not to do it. But if you're getting an abortion, it's better not to do it. But once you get it, forget about it. Just
Hmm.
go repent, confess your sins, and promise never to do it again. And it's in the past. Don't worry about it. It's the same with any other sin that you do, any other mistake that you made. Oh, when I was 20, I shouldn't have done this and that. And don't worry about it. It's in the past. If you've confessed and you've been forgiven, forget about it. So this whole thing about pressure or necessity, I would just focus on our free will. And what do you want? Do you want to serve a slave master who's cruel? Do you want to have a God who's just a sugar daddy vending machine in the sky? Or do you want to have a relationship and have that intimacy and have that mystical marriage? Like that's where it's at. That's the one I would recommend.
But some people, David, will say, and this is what I struggle with, is why would this cruel slave master what, send me to hell? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And so remember, we had a little. I said to
exchange.
you, I think hell is subjective,
Yeah.
and you think it's objective.
Well, I think
I
it's
still
objective and subjective.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. It can't not be subjective because there's subjects there, and it can't
Right.
not be objective because God is sovereign. God is the overlord of everything. There's nothing that's not within His purview. He has that sovereignty and that dominion. So it's objective, and because we are creatures, it's objective because God is God, and it's subjective because the people in hell or the souls in hell, or the beings in hell, because there are demons also, the beings in hell are subjects. So that's why it's
Okay.
both objective and subjective. But in terms of worrying about God and how could God do that and whatever, well, God doesn't do that. God doesn't do anything that's evil. And the evil, like the evil of hell, Because evil is not a thing, but a way. It's a way of falling away from the good. And hell is no different. Hell is the epitome of that evil. Hell is the epitome of evil. It's the epitome of falling away from the objective goodness that is God. So it's a falling away from the good, and it's a choice that's made by creatures, and it's an irrational choice. It's not a rational choice. It's a very irrational choice. It's the most irrational choice you can make, is to give the middle finger to your creator and say, come what may, I'm defiant and I hate you. And even though you're the source of everything that's good, I hate you. And we can just look again to the shadow here below in human relationships. Look at the mother who kills her child. Look at the murderer and the rapist and the the corrupt politician. Any example that touches your heart. Look at that person and ask yourself, okay, is this actually reality? Is this human being, this creature of God, really full of hatred for their fellow man, for their brother, for their sister, for their own child? Is this reality? Or am I dreaming? Do I need to, escape from the harsh reality of this sick world that I live in and just pretend that everything's okay and just go about my day and ignore the bums on the street that are
Mhm.
begging for money and just pretend like, no, that's not real, and just go about your business and watch your shows and go to your restaurants and live your cozy life with the air conditioning in the summer and your heat in the winter, and you don't
Mhm.
have a care in the world and you're not worried about anything. You can live that way, but if you face reality, then you will see that hell is real, because you will see human beings mistreating other human beings. And that's a little taste. That's just a little taste of real hatred. It's a real taste of uh, not only hatred of neighbor and not only hatred of God, but hatred of self. We can see it. It's just painful to admit it, that that's the world we live in, right? So that's how I see it. I don't know if that
Mhm.
answered your question, but that's how I see it. It's hatred.
Yeah.
Hatred is real. It's ugly. It's almost too ugly to look at and acknowledge as real, but it is real.
Yeah. I like, I can tell that you've done a lot of like reading and understanding, the doctrines and dogmas of the Catholic Church. And I, I, I do think though sometimes, have you ever read The Grand Inquisitor?
Yeah. Is
Did
that
you read
CS?
that
Is
one?
that C.S. Lewis, or who's that?
No, that was Dostoevsky.
No,
When
no, no, no,
when
no.
when Christ came back. Yeah.
Oh,
Um, if you ever get a chance, read
okay,
that
okay. I know I
because
like
it,
his writing style very much. Yeah.
yeah, um, it was during the Inquisition, and I'm not going to try to explain the story to you because I'll screw it up. But it was during the Inquisition, and Christ came back.
Okay.
Okay, and they threw him in prison again. Well, anyway, I mean, it's a fantastic story,
Is it a
and
short story or a long story?
it's it it was in Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers
Oh,
Karamazov.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
and it's within that
Oh, no
book.
way.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
The Grand Inquisitor I think is a chapter
It's
of
like a
that book, but
chapter.
it's
Okay.
okay. But the Grand Inquisitor, I think, would be worth reading.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
be,
yeah. Is it accepted by the Orthodox Church as sound
um,
teaching, or?
the Orthodox, as far as Dostoevsky and these guys go, they they had a problem with some of them even had a problem with their own Orthodox Church. I
Mhm.
mean, guys like Berdyaev saw the Catholic Church as just totally legalism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
and he's kind of hard to understand, but like it was all of like the church, like it was just a bunch of legal rules. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
rules,
yeah,
rules,
yeah,
rules,
yeah,
and it was kind of like we were Pharisaical,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And so, I mean,
yeah,
he brought up some good points, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
like the schism, like what happened there, like what like even forget about the Protestant Reformation,
Yeah.
like I mean the schism happened before that.
Yeah.
What was the deal on that? Like what actually happened there,
Yeah. I
you
don't
know?
know. I don't know.
And like, if you talk to the Greeks, I mean, the, and I'm not a scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but it's the Roman Catholics who got it wrong.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to hear the arguments between both faiths. Like, the Orthodox Church has a different take on original sin.
Mm.
It's, like, it's kind of far out. Like, it's hard to, but they do.
What's your
They
understanding of original sin?
oh geez, is oh man, original sin is you know what, Dave, I'm drawing a blank on that.
Well, okay. Let me ask you, because I don't know.
Mhm.
Do you believe in evolution and the millions of years of suffering and death before Adam and Eve,
No,
or
no, I don't believe in evolution. Okay, I believe, like,
creation? You believe in fiat creation?
I believe in creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I do, like, and I'm not sure about, like, I know that you're a young earther. I'm not sure what all that stuff means,
Yeah.
but I know that evolution is baloney.
Hogwash. It's hogwash.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
You just
what?
intuitively know that. You intuitively know that, or you studied some science,
No,
or
no, no, David. It's just intuitively. I
yeah,
just it's something I
it
didn't
stinks.
study. Yeah, I don't know nothing about it. Like, I listen to you when you talk about it. I think, geez, I wish I knew what he was talking about sometimes, but I find it very interesting, but I just don't get it. But
Yeah.
I just know that it's not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I know it's hogwash.
Yeah. 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 And you know that God is the all-powerful creator, and it's easy for him. Everything's easy for him.
Yeah, that I mean, like, I just believe that. It's like, when people talk well about evolution and they'll say, well, can you prove this? I can't prove nothing, but
Yeah.
I know that it's
Yeah.
like, like, I know some people can, like, I mean, have you heard of, do you follow Robertson Jenis at all?
Oh
Um,
yeah, I have a friend and a guest who is a big fan and highly
mhm,
recommends him. And yeah, he seems like a sharp guy. I haven't spent a lot of time listening to him or watching his videos,
yeah,
but he seems like a smart guy. I've watched one film that he co-produced or something like that.
yeah,
And I have sympathy towards, I'm sort of a de facto geocentrist. Like I just happen to prefer that the earth is at the center of the universe. But I studied physics at university and I worked at the Canadian Space Agency, and so I've got some ingrown biases against geocentrism,
okay,
just because
okay,
of the study and my experience at the space station. Just the
okay,
whole heliocentric thing is just my whole life long, and I don't have a strong dogmatic reason to reject heliocentrism, other than to just say that Christ came to the earth and Christ is the center, therefore the earth is the center. That's about as far as I could go in terms of a theological reason to put the earth at the center of the universe. But I'm not really, really, really passionate about geocentrism. I just have a light preference for it, and I have a slight bias against it because of my scientific background. Not that I was a scientist or anything. I just studied physics and worked a couple of jobs in physics. But I still have that bias against geocentrism. But I could be convinced, and I want to be convinced. I just haven't made a priority to look into it. But Sungenis, he fights pretty energetically for the geocentrism, right?
that's right. Yeah, I don't know much about it, but let me ask you this, because I respect your opinion. I've read, and this was in Berdyaev's book, is he said that if you believe in the Trinity, you can't be an atheist. An atheist, if you believe in the Trinity, atheism is definitely out.
Obviously, yeah, that seems obvious. Yeah, yeah.
I never understood that, but I just thought, okay, well, if you're a monotheist, in other words, like like
Jews, Muslims.
say a Jew, yeah, you can be an atheist, but if you believe in the Trinity, you can't.
Okay.
I never got that.
No, well, I mean, the way I see it, okay, is, uh, I've always talked about this, and people get sick of listening to me, but it's a three-step process. you go from atheism in all its various forms to monotheism. That's the first step, where you
Hmm.
acknowledge that the uncaused first cause, God,
Okay.
that than which
Okay.
nothing greater can be conceived, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of monotheism. That's the first step. The second step is into Christianity, because you could become a Jew or a Muslim, but
Right.
for historical reasons, it's just obvious. If you look honestly at history, it's just obvious that the Messiah came. You're a God-fearing man. You believe in the one God of the Jews, the
Hmm.
Muslims, and the Christians, and you just look at history. What's all this talk of the Messiah, the coming Messiah, the coming Messiah, the coming Messiah, and the dates and the signs and the symbols of what's going to happen, and the place and the time of the coming of the Messiah? And it's just obvious, especially in retrospect, looking at the history. What happened 2,000 years ago? Did something big happen in the Middle East 2,000 years ago? Yes, everything
Hmm.
changed. Everything
Hmm.
changed. Christianity is true. So that's the second step from monotheism to Christianity. And then the final step is into the fullness of Christianity, which is by looking at authority, we come to the Catholic Church, the authority to give us the canon of Scripture, the authority to to define dogmas and all these sorts of things. So I see it as a spectrum, and the my guest today, I think it was my previous guest before you, he said that atheism is nothing more or less than Protestantism taken to its logical conclusion, and he's a Protestant. He's a
Hmm.
Protestant, and he said that atheism is Protestantism taken to its logical conclusion. I couldn't agree more, because there is that spectrum. It is a spectrum. The atheist, the monotheist, the Christian, the Catholic, we're all on this spectrum, and it's not a hard line. When I went from a naive Christian as a boy into an agnostic atheist as a teen, and then later on became a Satanist, and then became a Muslim for a short time, and it was sort of a de facto, well, I was a de facto sort of a generic monotheist, and then I toyed with Islam, and then I finally took the leap into Christianity because I witnessed the Catholic Mass, right? The power of the Catholic Mass. Um, all of that is a fluid spectrum with no abrupt, harsh changes in my personality. Now I'm striving for virtue, whereas before I was sort of just indulging a little bit more freely my appetites. But basically, it's a very, very smooth and organic transition from Protestant to atheist, agnostic, Satanist, monotheist, Muslim, Catholic. It's just like it's a very easy, smooth ride with some subtle reorientations on the inner life, like what are my priorities, what's important, who is God, what is God, how do I serve him, how do I know him. And
Hmm.
they're all just little subtle refinements, and you can move in the good direction, you can move in the bad direction, and you can come back again in the right direction, and then you can go deeper and you can find out more about God and religion. So I see this, all of this, to say that it's a very, very, very organic thing, the life of a human being in this fallen world, to get from cradle to grave, and then at the moment of death to be prepared to die and to meet your creator and to be in the state of grace. It's a rocky road in some senses, but in other senses you're the same person, and you're just making little adjustments in
Hmm.
your attitude. Maybe it's something your friend said, or your mother said, or your teacher said, or maybe it's something that you read in a book, or maybe it's the philosophy that you studied, or maybe it's a mystical experience at church, or maybe it's love, or maybe an epiphany you had during wild sex, or maybe you were at a
Hmm.
satanic orgy and you had an epiphany. There's one of my favorite saints who's not fully canonized as a saint is Blessed Bertolo Longo. He was a high priest of Satanism, and he had a conversion experience, and
Hmm.
he dedicated his life to the Blessed Virgin Mary and the Rosary. And if you've heard of Our Lady of Pompeii, that's the image that miraculously converted him when he was at his
Hmm.
lowest point. So all of this to say, it's a wild journey. We're all on our way to death. Like, we're gonna die. We're gonna be in one of two states: the state of mortal sin or the state of grace. And so yeah, I would not want to sort of pigeonhole anyone, like you're a Jew, you're a Muslim, you're a good Catholic, you're Protestant. These are very loose things, and they're in motion. And I'm sure that most people that you've met have gone through ups and downs in terms of their worldview too, and changed their mind many, many times in terms of what they believe.
Well, I was just wondering if your ministry, if that's what you call it, is with your, like you understand evolution, you understand, I mean, you seem to be a pretty knowledgeable guy in the faith. Do you believe that you're bringing people to Christ?
I hope so.
Yeah, is that what you're? Is that why you do the podcast? Or I mean, it's a personal question. You don't have to ask the answer.
I would love to be instrumental in a tiny way in bringing people to Christ or closer to Christ. But to be honest with you, the primary objective is to pray for my guests, to have them, they're on a prayer list, and I don't name them, they're just on a list, and I give it to Our Lady, like they're included in my daily intention, my implicit intentions every day. And so you're on that list, and I have a perpetual mass said for each and every guest. So there's a mass being said each and every day. That's the number one priority. That's the number one reason why I'm excited to continue the podcast. So that's the most important thing, because on Judgment Day and in heaven, I'm going to get to see the fruits of this, of these masses and of these prayers. And I'm not treating God like a vending machine, but there is sort of that idea that we can plant seeds, and it's exciting to see the garden that, because we plant the seed, but God gives the growth, as St. Paul said. So with this time that we have in this life, it's kind of exciting to plant some seeds and just see what happens. And, I like to argue too. So there's the human element where it's like, I like to argue with atheists. I like to argue with Protestants and stuff like that. And it's fun just arguing and thinking about ideas and playing with ideas and all that sort of thing. So there's the prideful self-satisfaction of just playing around with people in conversation, just like you would do at a party. Like, let's say you meet some new people at a party, and you've got your favorite sports team, and you want to talk sports, and you just have that banter. So there's that sort of human element where it's just fun to chat about your favorite topic, which in my case is philosophy and religion, right? But I can separate that. Like, my predisposition is I like talking about philosophy and religion, right?
Yeah.
But that's separate from the mystical part, which is like, hey, I might be instrumental in planting seeds, and I can't wait to see in heaven how God used these seeds, right? Because everything is grace. And so if I have the grace to have the faith, and I have the grace to pray, and I have the grace to go to the sacraments, and I have the grace to try to strive to be virtuous, and to talk to people about God, and to hear their story, and all these sorts of things, all these things are grace. And so grace builds upon grace, and it's, in my mind, there's way more happening than meets the eye, and it's only on Judgment Day and in heaven that we're going to see how God used me and how he used you. And that's the exciting part for me.
Like, I love Mary. I but I don't know about you. I just, praying the rosary is hard for me.
It's hard.
I don't, for some reason, I just, when I pray the rosary, I just feel like I'm whipping through it, and it's almost like I feel like I'm disrespecting Mary when I'm praying it. So I don't pray it that much, because I don't know, it just, the way I pray is sometimes it's for me, it's kind of like a feeling. And I've tried to pray the rosary. It just doesn't work for me.
Can I give you a tip?
Sure.
I am not good at doing fixed prayers. I am not good at it, so I can relate to your situation. Okay, I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
because I'm not holy, and like, read about the
Hmm.
holy saints, and they were in ecstasy because prayer for them was deep and meaningful and mystical. For me, it's not like that. For me, prayer is not like that. For me, prayer is a task that I feel like I'm either wasting my time or I'm wasting God's time or both, because I'm just
Hmm.
burning through these memorized things and not
Right.
putting anything into it. Okay. But,
Right.
in the meantime, having recognized that that's where I'm at in my walk with God, I'm like not very good.
Right.
Having recognized that, I found a little silver lining that I think
Okay.
you could benefit from too. Okay.
Sure.
And it'll lead you to do fixed prayers more frequently, possibly.
Okay.
And the trick is that during COVID, I had some sort of weaknesses when temptation and sin. Okay.
Hmm.
And so I realized that, hey, my prayer life, like there's a connection between my spiritual strength and my prayer life. I was neglecting my prayer life. I was neglecting the sacraments, and the demons sensed the weakness. They came in and they tempted me, and I'm weak, so I
Hmm.
fell. So I realize now that prayer, the
Hmm.
main thing about prayer for me now at this weak stage in my development as a Christian, my what I can use and understand about prayer is that it's like when you have pests in your house and you phone the fumigator and they come in and they fumigate,
Yeah.
and it's gonna choke the mice or whatever the rodents or whatever pests you have in your house. The fumes are just gonna annoy them and they're gonna move out or they're gonna die or whatever.
Right.
So I see prayer as a fumigation. Get rid of the demons. Just make it uncomfortable for the demons. Just
Okay.
make this space here, David Ross, make this
Yeah.
space uncomfortable for the demons. I'm uncomfortable
Okay.
when I'm praying. I'm uncomfortable, I'm nervous, I'm anxious. That's
Yeah.
probably the agitation of the demons, because I'm susceptible
Yeah.
to the demons. So now I try to enjoy the dryness, the frustration, the fact that I'm like almost in a panic when I'm trying to pray, or the fact that I'm annoyed, and
Oh,
use
yeah.
that. It's like,
Right.
wow, if you think that I feel uncomfortable, just imagine how all these demons feel. They must really be
Okay.
uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I turn it to my advantage. I say,
Right.
oh, am I distracted? Oh, good. Am I annoyed? Good.
Yeah.
Am I crappy at praying? Good. Because this is torture. This is torture for the demons. And I'm just getting a little bit of discomfort, right? Which is, now I like to think of that little bit of discomfort as sort of like just the faintest echo of the torture, the
Yeah.
absolute torture that I'm submitting Satan and his demons to. So I want you to think about
I'll
that as
try
a
that.
trick, a tip and a trick, because
I
it
will.
might help you. It might help you to
Yeah.
get some satisfaction into torturing these demons, and they deserve it. They deserve it
Yeah.
because they hate God. you know?
But I'll tell you, Dave, I'll tell you what happens to me with if this makes sense to you, and it baffles my mind because I feel closer to God. I hear God's voice when I sin.
What?
Yes, I'm serious.
Okay. Okay. It's when you're sinning or when you repent of your sin.
When I'm not sure,
Okay.
I can't figure it out. But
Okay.
when I actually know that I've sinned, when I
Uh, uh,
okay,
okay.
it's something. It's I guess I could call it mystical in a way, but it's like I'm getting yeah this
Huh,
that's when I
huh,
God speaks to me when I mean he has spoken to my heart. I can hear him
uh,
when I sin.
yeah. So it's kind of like when you're in the hospital, and whenever you're wounded, the doctor comes around to visit you. It's like every time my condition gets worse, the doctor comes around.
The
It's
doctor comes
amazing. It's
around.
amazing.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's what the Orthodox say the Catholic Church is. Like when they say Orthodox and Roman Catholic, I just say baloney. I just say we're all Catholic.
Yeah.
Don't give me
Yeah.
this bullshit
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
so but the Orthodox, that's how they feel about the church. It's healing. It's a
Yeah,
physician.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
you're
yeah,
and it's just like what you said. The doctor comes
yeah,
and he heals you.
yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
As long as you're not sinning on purpose so that grace may abound, like St. Paul says, right? Like, you remember when he said that?
Right.
God forbid that we should sin so that grace may abound more. But it's true. It is nonetheless true that where sin is, grace abounds. So there you go.
That's right. And Dostoevsky had a good line. He says, thinking too much is a
Mm.
disease.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times we think so much. We're constantly thinking
Yeah.
of is this right? Is this
Yeah. Yeah.
wrong?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
come on already,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I agree with you 100%. I 100% agree with you. And it's the monkey mind, control freak. It's my project. You're like, hey, I'm religious. I'm going to do the religious things. Like, you missed the point of religion. You know what I mean? You have to be. You have to be in the moment. You have to be like present. Like you're,
Like you said in the marriage, it's got to be a relationship.
yeah.
It's
And,
got to be a mystical relationship.
And if your fantasy of being a saint gets in the way of your obligations to your wife and your kids and your job and this and that and the other thing, it's demonic. I'm sorry. If your little fantasy about being a, legalistic, top-notch Catholic is getting away in the way of stuff that's right there. That's why I like the Opus Dei and the
Yeah,
Saint Jose Maria Escriva, where he talks about the regular, boring life that you have. That's where it's at. That's where you have your
yeah,
sanctification. This is the universal call to holiness of Vatican II. It's right there. You don't need to
right
go
there.
to the third world to help the starving people.
No,
No, you got problems here. You got, like Jesus said, today will furnish its own problems. Don't worry about tomorrow till tomorrow.
that's absolutely yeah, I think, David, I think I guess that's probably why I'm drawn to your podcast is because um, it's just, it's just real. Like my favorite book or my favorite book in scripture is I like James.
Yeah, I
Okay.
love it. Yeah, I love it. It's just
Because,
one of my
because
favorites.
James says, how in the heck can you love God if you're not loving your neighbor?
Mm.
What kind of hypocrite are you?
Go
If
and be well fed and warm. Bye. Right? But
yeah,
you don't give them food, you don't give them a coat. What are you doing?
it's like, yeah, come on. And like sometimes I don't want to read it, but it's my favorite. It's my go-to book.
I love what he says about the tongue, a little fire.
Yeah. Yeah. He's, I don't know, was James an apostle? No.
Well,
Hey?
yeah, there are two James, the James the Lesser, James the Greater. I've asked a bunch of Catholic guests on the show, which one's which and which one is the guy that wrote
Yeah.
the epistle? I can never keep it straight. But I love him. I love him. I love him. And I do pray for his intercession every day. I pray
And that's,
for, there's one of my little prayers that I do is Saint Andre Bessette here in Montreal. I pray for
yeah.
his intercession. I pray Saint Joseph and Saint James. But I have a
Right.
devotion to many saints. Saint Jude. Do you know Saint
Hmm.
Jude? Desperate Cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not clear on his story why he was selected as the patron saint of desperate cases. I'm not sure why that is, but these
Don't,
these
don't know.
legends, these legends, they probably have some significance back in the mists of time in the early church, right?
Oh, for sure. Like but after you're mentioning St. James, I think, it's almost like, okay, you like St. James, Dan? Well, why don't you just make him your patron
There
saint?
you
And
go.
why don't you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
do that.
Have a little devotion. Have a little. Do you have a home? Like you see how I have a home shrine? Can
Yeah,
you
I like
see
that.
that?
I like that.
So I've got like the crucifix, and I've got a couple of icons and stuff like that. And
Yeah, it's
because
nice.
because we are in the flesh, we are in the body. and we have to have posture when we pray. And
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking of. You know, one of the saints uh, used to pray the rosary often
Hmm.
on her knees. I forget which saint it was, but one time she was praying sitting in a chair, and the Blessed Virgin appeared to her and said, "I'm astonished that you disrespect me this way, praying
Wow.
sitting while sitting."
Oh,
And I thought, oh my God, what is Mary thinking about me? What is she thinking about me? Oh my God, I better show some reverence and respect because this is ridiculous. You know, but the thing is, God meets us where we are.
that's right.
I'm not very good at praying and, you know, at anything really in my walk with God, but He loves me. He's very, very patient with me. And, you know, there's a double-edged sword when it comes to God's patience. There's a double-edged sword because, yes, God is patient, but Saint Ignatius of Loyola, no, um, Saint Alphonsus Liguori, he
Hmm.
said, he said, what we should fear is not the justice of God. What we should fear is the patience of God. We should tremble at the patience of God. Because what is the patience of God? God is watching and God is patient, but He's watching and He's allowing us. Have you ever heard the expression, give him enough rope to hang himself? Have you heard that expression before?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the image that I think of when I think about what St. Alphonsus Liguori said about God's patience and how we should tremble at the fact that God is patient with us because he's just letting us do our thing and he's just letting us am I heaping up judgment? Am I heaping up you know, with my rebellion which God is allowing. And this is you're not going to like this. You're not going to enjoy this little thought experiment, but it's something that I use to sober myself from time to time, just to remind myself, you know, that yes, God is merciful. Yes, God is He wants me to be saved, but He's also going to let me do whatever I want to do. He's going to let me do whatever I want to do. And guess what? What I want to do is selfish. Like to put it in simple terms, what I want to do is very, very selfish, right? I want pleasure, I want food, I want sleep, I want this, I want that. And God's allowing me to do it. So it's a double-edged sword. Yes, I appreciate that God is patient, but I have to remind myself that this is a very, very serious business and that virtue is not optional and that I can't just keep patting myself on the back like I made a tiny gesture and God understands and God, you know, God is merciful and He understands. He understands that I'm weak. He understands that I'm weak. He understands that I'm weak today. He understood that I was weak yesterday. And for the past 50 years, He's understood that I'm weak. Well, hey, how about actually making an effort, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, to conquer your weakness? So I think about the priest in the confession booth with the people coming in week after week or month after month, where however often people go to confession, but to hear them committing the same sins over and over and over and over and over again.
Hmm.
I mean, I think you understand what I'm driving at here with the patience of God,
Hmm.
how it's a double-edged sword. Because at a certain point,
Hmm.
if I were the priest, I think I would probably lose my temper and I would say, look, you got to stop sinning. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, Pope Francis just said recently, or whatever it was, that we have to be forgiving. The priest has to be forgiving in the confessional because that child of God came. They left the comfort of their home. They came through the snow. They got into the church. They waited in line. They got into the confession booth. And so, for the love of God, have mercy, show mercy, and forgive them because they took that initiative, and they're there. They're there in the confessional booth. So, for the love of God, have mercy. And he tempered that advice, Pope Francis did, by saying, yes, we have canon law and we have to follow the rules of canon law. Okay,
Hmm.
we have to follow and
Hmm.
respect the rules of canon law. But you're a human being. You're a priest, and the person in the confession booth is a human being, and we can go beyond canon law. So we have to respect canon law, but we have to go beyond. We have to be human. So he seems to be striking that balance that that you're talking about with the
Yes, I
legalism,
believe so.
the rigorism, the
Yes.
canon law, the letter of the
Yeah.
law, and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a refreshing balance. That's one of the many reasons why I love and respect Pope Francis.
Well, it's like, and I don't know if you've ever pondered this, but when Jesus said, I come to fulfill the law. Okay, what the hell does that mean? Okay, like, what does that mean? Okay,
Yeah.
fulfill the, okay, so we got this law, okay, and we know the law is good, okay, but then people say, well, there's legalism. Then Jesus comes along and says, look, I'm not doing away with the law, I'm fulfilling a law. Okay, well, what does that mean?
What it means is that once you've climbed the ladder,
Mm-hmm.
you can kick the ladder away from the wall. You've arrived. Like you are
Okay,
fully alive. You're fully human.
there you go.
God's glory is man fully alive. So when David ate the bread that was only for the priest in the temple, he didn't violate the law. And Jesus said, that's what Jesus said. He said that, you know, I made
Yeah,
the Sabbath for man, not man for the Sabbath. He's always talking about that. How do you escape sin? How do you escape the rigorous letter of the law? How do you escape it? You escape it by living fully in virtue, in love, in truth, in God. And, you know, as St. Paul says, and as I never tire of repeating, we
yeah,
die to self and we live in Christ. That's where the freedom is, because Christ is freedom incarnate. So like this paradox about like the law and fulfill the law and obey the law, and the law is like tying my hands and it's limiting my freedom, but it is freedom. But you know, it really is a paradigm shift when you just think about it mystically. And this is the sort of the theme that you keep bringing up, which is very relevant and which
yeah,
is often forgotten today in today's high-tech world. It's that mystical dimension once again. It's like we have to, one of the images I like to use, which maybe you could incorporate too, is like the Truman Show with Jim Carrey. You know, it's like, hey, wait a minute, is this real? Is this theater? Like, where's the camera? You know,
yeah.
it's that sort of all the world's a stage and we're but actors and this sort of thing. You know, one of the tricks that I like to use, and maybe you can play with this idea in your spare time, is thinking that right now you think that you're acting out your life, you're making your choices, you wake up and you do this and you do that, and you make decisions and they have consequences, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. Okay, you think that you're living your life now. Okay, but what I want you to do is to pretend or imagine, as a thought experiment, which is a mystical also a mystical endeavor, to pretend that instead of living your life now, what you're doing is it's Judgment Day and you are witnessing your life. Okay? So it's Judgment Day and you're just going. So if you're the actor in the film and you did X, Y, and Z throughout your life, now we hold up the celluloid, that film roll. We look, this is your life. And you can look from the first frame to the last frame. You can look through it on Judgment Day, frame by frame by frame. I did this, I thought this, I said this, I omitted this good action, I sinned, I repented, Go through every frame of your life on Judgment Day, okay? So I want you to think about that. Place yourself in that mindset that right now it is Judgment Day and you're just going through frame by frame of your life. And this, what you call today, it's already set in the books. And so the reason that this is valuable to me is that it's like, oh my God, it's Judgment Day. I'm having my life examined by God Almighty, who is perfectly just. And so frame by frame, moment by moment, there are decisions that I make. And oh my God, let's insert more virtue, more grace, more cooperation with grace, and less sin, less selfishness, less hatred, less vice. Okay, so the experiment, the thought experiment, is to remove yourself from the
Yeah.
temptation. So let's say you like chocolate cake and you've had one piece and it tasted really good, and you think, well,
Hmm.
I could have a second piece. Okay, so you just think, well, okay, it's Judgment Day. I'm watching this film. This is what's happening. It's a birthday party. I'm there. I had one piece. It was good. I want to have a second piece. So what would you say to yourself on Judgment Day when you're watching this unfold? You would
Hmm.
say, hey, here's an opportunity to win some brownie points. No pun intended. Win
Yeah.
some brownie points, get some air mile points to get a higher place in
Right.
heaven, right? And it's true that this is a little bit of a selfish thought experiment, and it's a little bit like pretending like God's a vending machine and we're going to get more goodies if we play the game right. But it's a motivation to inject more virtue, more love of God, more self-sacrifice into each moment of your life, rather than just saying, well, I deserve a second piece of cake or whatever, whatever it is. It's a silly
Right.
example. It's a silly example, but you get the idea, right?
Well, what I'm one of the things that I've read is this thing imagination can be good, and this thing imagination cannot be good.
Especially in the
Okay.
East, yeah, the Desert Fathers, for bad use of the imagination for any reason, religious or otherwise.
Hmm. Yeah, like if I'm imagining something, okay. I mean, do you know what a phantasm is? Or
Yeah,
like they say, like pornography is
yeah,
like a phantasm,
yeah,
okay, but and that's using your imagination
yeah,
somehow, right?
yeah,
but but okay, so an example of using your imagination for the good, because imagination is a good thing.
of course.
Okay, and what you're in the example that you gave prior to that is, yeah, I use my imagination, and yeah, that's great, but like, how do I do it? Like, it's because imagination is like, hey, I'm good at imagination. I'm really good at it.
Yeah,
Like, I remember I would sit at my grandparents' farm, and they had a sandbox, a rock pile in the back, and it was just a big bunch of sand with rocks. And I'd go in there and I'd bat rocks into the meadow, okay, and pretend I'm a baseball player, and I'm imagining this stuff, and I'm thinking, like, well, hey, this is good. So imagination can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing too.
it's dangerous. And it's funny. It's funny that you mention it, the imagination, because Satan doesn't have access to our will, but he does have access
Hmm.
to our imagination, right?
Yeah.
So this is why it's very dangerous. And I do agree with you. It's very dangerous. Nonetheless, I do try to use my imagination for good. Another thing that I do, which is borderline imagination, borderline reality, because it is true that Christ is with us, that God is in us, and that He's with us. He's everywhere. God is everywhere. So it's not a complete fantasy. It is reality. But when you imagine that Jesus Christ is right beside you,
Hmm.
uh, it kind of changes your behavior, right?
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you take the just like the real presence in the Eucharist, I do believe it.
Right.
I do believe it.
Right.
But there you can summon up the fervor for it, and you can summon up the reverence, okay? Or not. You could just go in a distracted way and just like go through the motions. And whether you believe it or not, you know, I mean, what I mean to say is, even if you
Yeah.
really do believe it, you can still treat it with contempt. You can still treat it with contempt just because you're not present, you're not preparing yourself, and you're not treating it with the reverence that you should. So that's a danger. But
Do
if
you
you
think it would be a good thing to, okay, you go to mass. I don't know if you go to mass on Saturday or Sunday, but
Sunday,
regardless, let's say I go to mass tomorrow, and I'm imagining the Eucharist. I'm taking this, and I'm going to imagine um, God. You know,
present.
yeah. I'm imagining the Eucharist as God. And I'm just playing. Is this a good thing to do, or not a good thing to do?
I think
To
it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous, but it's um it can be good.
Hmm.
And I think that if, as long as you don't forget that it's dangerous and that it can be abused and it can be bad, we can use a moderate, self-controlled, limited, um, you know,
Yeah.
letting God in on the process. It's like, hey, God, I'm doing this not for any sort of superficial, uh, um, what do you call it? Like special effects, like
Yeah.
excitement, or to brag and boast to my friends. Hey, I really saw today what I saw in the Eucharist. Da, da, da. Okay. Um, what
Yeah.
what I A perfect example of this attitude of humility is in the book of Tobit. Are you familiar
Hmm.
with the
Yeah, I've
marriage?
heard of it. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
familiar with the story where the son goes off and he meets a distant relative and they get married? Do you know the story?
I,
A
I,
little bit,
I think I
vaguely.
heard it, but I can't remember it.
Okay. In any case, it's beautiful. I recommend you read the story.
Yeah.
But the most beautiful part to me is the marriage of the son that meets this distant cousin or whatever he is,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
before they consummate the marriage with the marriage act,
Right.
which most of us approach with at least some amount of selfish lust. Okay, let's be honest. Okay,
Right.
most of us do. I do. I certainly do. I mean, it's just like basically 100% lust for me. Yeah, a very little spiritual. I'm not very holy in that way. But in the book of Tobit, the son and his new bride, before they consummate their marriage, they say a prayer, and it's Tobit who, whatever the guy's name is, Tobit or
Hmm.
Tobit's son, I can't remember. But anyway,
Hmm.
he says a prayer, and part of the prayer is what we're about to do is not for lust, to satisfy our lust, but
Hmm.
it's for you, God. And it's the most humble and beautiful thing. Like it's
Hmm.
one of my favorite things in the Bible because
Hmm.
it is so unnatural for me. It's like when I eat that second piece of chocolate cake, I'm not doing it for God. Sorry. I'm not doing it for God. I'm not. I'm satisfying my lust. It's it. That's all it is. And the first piece was to satisfy my lust. Okay? I don't eat anything for any reason other than to satisfy my lust. Period. It's like it tastes good, it's salty, it's sweet, it's oily, whatever. It's like I'm just satisfying my own lust. So I want to take the example of Tobit or whoever it was,
Hmm.
and I want to start getting in the habit of saying, this is not to satisfy my lust. This is for you,
Hmm.
God. And even if it's not true, even if it's not
Hmm.
true, and God knows that it's
Hmm.
probably not true, the first 1,000 times that I say it, it won't be true. But to get in the habit and to ask God, hey, let's make this a reality. Like I'm going through the motions now. I'm thanking you. I'm saying it's not to satisfy my lust. Let's make this happen, right? It's a project. With God's help, maybe one day I'll get there. But I can't remember what your original question was, but I'm
No, I
feeling.
know. I know where you're going with this, and it, it's. I think it relates to what you said earlier. Is you kick the ladder out. You know, when
Uh,
you kick,
uh, uh, being
and you're
free,
just
being free.
you're free.
Yeah, so that's good.
You,
That's good. That's a good point because right now I'm not free. I'm not free from gluttony and from laziness and
yeah.
all these sorts of. I'm not free at all. It's like I'm a complete slave to the world and to my passions and all these sorts of things. But to transcend, if you want to be free from the rigorous letter of the law, then be fully human, like Jesus
That's right.
Christ. Like Jesus Christ. Be like Christ. That's how you could be free. Okay? So, is it easy? I don't think so. I don't think it's easy. Is it possible? Well, some Christians say that it's impossible, and this is I prefer to think that it is impossible, and Jesus Christ said that it is impossible for man.
But David, think of
But
it this
nothing's
way.
impossible for God, right? So it's a
Well,
paradox.
think of it this way, David, with eating. Look, God created you to eat.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
good. It's good.
what's the problem?
It's good. Yeah, it's
Eat
good.
that second
Thank
piece
you.
of cake.
Thank you very much. I got you on tape saying it. I got you on tape. I'm gonna have that on loop. I'm gonna put that on loop. Eat the second piece of cake, David.
It's
I
okay.
got permission.
God, that's your fault I'm eating that second piece of cake. That's how you created me. You created me to eat.
But it's devil's food cake. It's devil's food cake. What am I gonna do?
Oh man, that's
Oh,
good.
that's good stuff. Listen, I'm gonna let you go. I gotta go tend to my
Okay.
wife. I gotta go hang out with my wife before bed here.
Yeah, she's
But
gonna get mad at you.
yeah. But it's a joy. It's a real joy and a pleasure to meet you. I can't believe that I met such a good friend, and that you're Canadian and everything.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And Sault Ste. Marie is a little bit of a hike, but if I ever end up in Northern Ontario, I'll definitely give you a call.
Oh, geez. And if I come to Montreal,
Yeah,
I'll look you up.
yeah, for sure. I'll take you to the St. Joseph's Oratory.
Oh, for sure. Oh, it
And
was great. I had a fun time.
yeah, well, I really appreciate talking to you, and we're gonna definitely talk again on a regular
You bet.
basis, okay?
Yeah.
And your sister, your feisty sister, she's gonna give me a call. Give her my email address and get her
I'll
to
get
come
my
on and
sister to
chat
give you a
with me.
call.
Yeah,
I'll get my brother to give you a call too.
yeah. So you talk to your family members like once every couple of months, or what do you?
Oh
How
yeah,
often are you in
yeah. I
touch
talk
with
to
them?
him on,
You talk regularly?
pretty regularly. Yeah, not
That's
not as
nice.
regular as I like to, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I've got
now you got an excuse to reach out to them.
I got a brother named David,
Okay.
like you,
Yeah.
and you know what the name David means,
Beloved
right?
of God.
Yeah, and it's my brother David. He's the beloved.
Ah,
He
who's the
is.
youngest? Who's the youngest?
The youngest is my brother Billy.
Okay.
He's the youngest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
And how
David is the beloved.
how many Catholics in the seven?
They're all Catholics.
Oh, they're all Catholics. No
Oh yeah,
way.
yeah,
Wow.
oh yeah.
That's pretty unusual that they would none strayed.
Oh, I mean, like the wheat and the tares, but oh no, they're all Catholics. That's it. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that's part of the law, Dave.
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. So yeah, you've given me a lot to think about. You've given me a lot to think about, and I'm going to be thinking about your perspective, because I like that you bring a lot of the Eastern wisdom and the mystical component.
Yeah,
I have an inclination to that, and if you listen to my podcast, you might get the impression that I'm very rigorous and legalistic about the dogmas and these sorts of things, and the Pope and the Church and the dogmas and all this sort of thing. And it's true, but I'm very tempered with the other side, which is more, just in my quiet introversion when I'm not on the podcast, and I'm constantly trying to
yeah.
have that sort of more organic approach, right? So it's a mix
Well,
of the two.
it's in your wife's blood too. She's Greek, so
Yeah,
she's got it.
yeah, yeah. And she's
So she's
otherworldly. She's otherworldly. She has these cute little horns that come out of her forehead. If I
tap into that
if
tap into that Greek stuff.
if I if I accidentally touch her, she'll bite me. She's like a cat.
I laughed at your story when you said that you guys had to elope or something because
Yeah, in-laws.
you weren't Greek.
Yeah. Who's this short Canadian guy? You know? They had lined up doctors, lawyers, and business owners, like everyone. No. I want this short little Scottish guy. What? Why? He's broke. That's what she wanted. She wanted me. So there you go.
Definitely no necessity there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you were the necessity, not your money.
Yeah. Yeah, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
I'll say.
So all the best. Please remember me and mine in your prayers, my brother, and I'll be
Absolutely, I
praying
will.
for you, and we'll talk soon, okay?
You take care now.
God bless you. Bye.
God bless. Bye.